Gonzaga hosts an LMU team they beat by 28 points last month. What do we want to see from Mark Few's club in response to Saturday's loss?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, folks? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Gametime. Folks, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. While the Zags return home, they got a chance to start a win streak, build a little momentum towards the end of the season. We're going to talk about LMU, what they've been up to since losing to the Zags earlier in January. We're also going to talk about what we want to see from the Zags tonight, and we're going to close out the show looking at Ryan Nembhard's historic season, the many records he could potentially break as a passer this year. We'll get to that at the end of the show. We start getting you ready for tonight's game. The Zags hosting the Lions of LMU, February 6th, 6 p.m. Pacific time. The game will be on ESPN Plus. Last week it was great. We had those two games on ESPN's flagship channels. The Oregon State game was on ESPN2, and then that game against St. Mary's on ESPN. Now we're back to ESPN Plus, which means KHQ Root in the Spokane media market. It means Fox 13 Plus in the Seattle market, and it means for everybody else, this game will be featured on ESPN Plus. Like we talked about in the cold open, the Zags have already played LMU this year back on January 4th. So it's going to be a little over a month since these two teams have met. Gonzaga played at LMU last time. Very comfortable win, 28-point margin of victory. The final score being 96-68 in that one. The Stars showed up in that one. Graham Ike, 27 points, 9 rebounds. He was 12 of 16 from the field. That included making his 1 3-point attempt. He was also 2 of 3 from the free throw line. Khalif Battle, one of his phenomenal performances this season, 26 points for him, 4 boards, 3 steals. He was 10 of 12 from the field. That included 4 of 5 from the 3-point line and 2 of 2 from the stripe. And then Emmanuel Ajayi, this was one of his better games. Until he's kind of his recent streak, this was probably his best game of the season. He played well against UConn as well, but against LMU and against his former coach, Lorenzo Romar, who's now an assistant at LMU, and his former teammate, Javon Porter, Ajayi had 15 points in 18 minutes off the bench. He also had a pair of boards and a pair of steals. He was 5 of 8, including knocking down his 1 3-point attempt and going a perfect 4 of 4 from the line. The Zags were 13 of 14 from the free throw line in that game. They were 7 of 16, which is about 44% from the 3-point line, and they held LMU to under 39% from the floor. Lions also had 14 turnovers, which among them were 8 steals for the Zags. This was a very good, very complete all-around performance for Gonzaga against an LMU team that at the time was not playing very well, but they have played much better as of late. After the Gonzaga lost, their next game was a road game against St. Mary's, which they obviously lost. St. Mary's has not lost to anybody in the conference, as we know. That was an 81-56 drubbing, so they got beat very badly by Gonzaga, turned around, went on the road, got beat very badly by the Gales in Moraga, but have won 5 straight since then. So now they go from being 1-4 in the WCC to now being 6-4 in conference play. They've passed Washington State in the standings. Things have gone much better in the last 3 to 4 weeks or so for Stan Johnson and the Lions. Granted, of those 5 wins, 2 of them were against San Diego, who is the worst team in the conference. 1 of them was against Pacific, who is the 2nd or 3rd worst team in the conference. And 1 of them was against Portland, who is the 2nd or 3rd worst team in the conference. So 4 of those 5 wins come against teams that you should be beating. Teams that LMU, it would be a disaster if they were not beating them. So you take the 5-game win streak, not necessarily with a grain of salt, but like, okay, they didn't do anything out of the ordinary, with the exception of the first of those 5 wins, which was a win against Santa Clara. Santa Clara has been a little bit up and down this year at times as well. This win happened kind of in mid-January when Santa Clara hadn't really – it took them a long time to find themselves this year. They had some good performances early in the season, but they also had a lot of bad performances early in the season. This was kind of before they had really started to rattle off some more consistency on both ends of the floor. So that's not to discredit LMU's win. This is still a nice win for them. They beat Santa Clara by 3, again, beat San Diego twice, beat Pacific, beat Portland. Earlier in the season, before that 5-game win streak, they also beat Oregon State by 21 points. That was a huge victory for them, kind of the real proof that Oregon State really struggles away from their home floor as they lost that one on the road. And for LMU, they also have a loss at San Francisco and a loss at Washington State. For the most part, with the exception of the win over Santa Clara, LMU has beaten the teams ahead of them, or beaten the teams behind them in the standings and lost the teams ahead of them. They're kind of a middle of the pack WCC team, and they've pretty much played like it. The Santa Clara win is the exception. The Washington State, again, they're ahead of Wazoo in the standings, yet they lost to them. That one it's a road game against a team that's previously been in a power conference, and it was when Wazoo was healthy. Wazoo's had serious injury issues all season long. Wazoo was healthier, I should say. They've never been fully healthy this year, but that loss is a little bit less significant for LMU because it happened at a time when Wazoo was playing better than they are currently. That puts LMU 14-8 overall on the season. Again, 6-4 in conference play. Not any super impressive non-conference wins with the exception of Nevada, which in itself is not a super impressive win. Nevada has struggled in conference play in the Mountain West and hasn't looked quite as excellent as they did early in the season. That's still a decent win for LMU. Their only other win against a top 150 team at KenPom is Belmont, who's 141st, I believe. Santa Barbara's like 151st, so just outside the top 150, but still not a lot of impressive non-conference wins for them. None of their losses are terrible with the exception of one. They lost to North Dakota at home. North Dakota currently 270th at KenPom, and LMU lost to them at home. Brutal loss for the Lions. They don't have an at-large resume. They didn't the second they lost that game. They wouldn't have one regardless, but it was a real killer for them on the season. KenPom has LMU 132nd in the country. They are a much better defensive team than they are offensively, 215th in adjusted offensive efficiency compared to 81st in defensive efficiency. Tempo-wise, they're about middle of the pack, 185th in that area. The main thing about this team, we talked about it last time, they are one of the tallest teams in college basketball. KenPom has an average height, and it's based on playing time. So if you have a bunch of 7'5" guys on your bench, but they never play, it's not going to factor in. Most teams do not have a bunch of 7'5" guys on their bench, but you understand what I mean. For LMU, they are the 9th tallest team in college basketball. They have a lot of size. They have size up and down the roster, size at every position. Despite this, they are the 332nd ranked team in terms of offensive rebound rate. They get almost no offensive rebounds. We're going to talk in the second segment about what that means for Gonzaga in terms of keys, but fairly interesting that a team with that much height struggles that much to generate any kind of offensive rebounds, second chance opportunities for their team. They also only shoot just under 50% on two-pointers, 49.5%, which is just 234th. So for a team with this much size, they don't use it all that well. They also have a lot of experience, 52nd in the country in terms of D1 experience on their roster. So a team with a lot of veteran guys, a lot of older guys, a lot of height. You're just not seeing it translate into a ton of success. But like we said, they are on a bit of a 5-game win streak right now. So feeling a little bit of momentum coming into Spokane for this game. The names to know, we talked about these players already, but I'll just reiterate. Caleb Stone Carrawell is their leading scorer. He's a transfer, I believe, from Utah Valley. 13.5 points per game, 2.5 boards, 1.5 assists, shooting about 34% from three on about 4 attempts per game. And then Javon Porter, a known entity for them. He was formerly at Pepperdine, was teammates with Michael Ajayi under Coach Romar. He transferred to LMU, while, of course, Ajayi transferred to Gonzaga. Porter following Coach Romar, who is now an assistant at LMU. On the season for the Lions, Porter's averaging 13 points, 8.2 boards, 2.2 assists, 1.5 blocks per game. He takes just over 5 3-pointers per game, but he's not very efficient at just 30% from three. They also have 2 other players on the wing. Will Johnston, the rat tail. Gonzaga fans all too familiar with him. He tends to play very well against the Zags. They also have Alex Merk-Valatsky. Both those guys average about 11 points per game. Both those guys are about 35% three-point shooters. Johnston is the one that has been a killer against Gonzaga in the past. Well, folks, Khalif Battle and Michael Ajayi both played well against LMU last time these two teams met. Can they get some of their mojo back tonight after struggling against St. Mary's? We're going to talk about that and more in our keys to this game, all coming up in just a second. But first, folks, are you looking for tickets for your next big event? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sporting event, finding the right ticket at the right price, it can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. Not only does it show you only the best deals, the app has a view from your seat feature so you can see exactly what your view is going to look like on game day. And the best part is you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they will refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Are you ready to make your next event even better? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Well, folks, get ready to bring your favorite Zags to life. VarsityIcons.com delivers the ultimate collection of action figures that honor current and former Zags. You're watching on YouTube, holding it up right here. Varsity Icons is the premier sports collectible figure for your Gonzaga Bulldogs. Today, we highlight everyone's fan favorite, Ben Gregg. Varsity Icons was started by a longtime Gonzaga Bulldogs fan who wanted to create collectible figures of everyone's all-time favorite Zags. The mission of Varsity Icons is to create figures of current and former Zags for everyone to collect and enjoy. There's no question that Varsity Icons wants to highlight Ben Gregg to be the first player. He has been a fan favorite since joining the Zags back in 2021. Ben exemplifies what it means to be a Gonzaga Bulldog every time he steps on the court. We are excited to create more of your favorite Zags in the future, so stay tuned. Order your Varsity Icons Ben Gregg figure today at varsityicons.com. Varsity Icons, where icons live forever. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are still talking about this game tonight against the Lions of LMU in Spokane. We want to talk about our keys to this game. Not necessarily keys to victory, although certainly things that we want to see Gonzaga do that will help lead to a W over LMU. LMU is a quad 3 opportunity for Gonzaga, part of a 5-game stretch before they have any more quad 1 games. I think their biggest game in this stretch is against San Francisco. That'll be a quad 2 game. The rest are all quad 3 or quad 4 games at this point. But we want to see this team start to kind of get back on track after that loss to St. Mary's. They got back on track the previous week and still did a lot of good things against St. Mary's, but obviously we're not able to pull off the W. Key number 1 for Gonzaga is kind of a theme we've seen throughout the season, especially the last half of the season. Stay disciplined on defense. Last time these two teams played, and it was a road game for Gonzaga, their defense was great. Like we said, they held LMU to 38.2% shooting. They held LMU to 33% from the 3. I think it was 8 of 24 for the Lions in that game. They had 8 steals, part of 14 turnovers committed by the Lions in that game. And in that game, Emmanuel Innocenti only played 10 minutes, which was at the time a lot for him. He was frequently playing 2 to 3 minutes per game and not playing at all in certain matchups. He played 10 minutes in that game because it was a blowout, and he was at the time not in Gonzaga's 8-man rotation. But now he's not only in the rotation, he's been in the starting lineup for the last 3 games, and we expect that to continue on Thursday against LMU. I expect he's tonight against LMU. I expect he's going to play big minutes. I expect he's going to start, and it kind of gives a bit of a different look for LMU. They can go back to their own tape. They can watch the film of that game and make some adjustments and prepare, but they're going to be facing a slightly different lineup. Battle's going to be coming off the bench, and Innocenti is going to be in the starting lineup. Instead of playing mostly in garbage time, he's going to play 18, 20, 25 minutes as a starter. And so I think that not only gives a different look that LMU has to be prepared for that they didn't see last time out, but it's obviously made Gonzaga's defense better. There's just no debate about that. So we want to see in this game, we want to see how the lineup looks against LMU in a different setting. We want to see the continued improvement in terms of defensive communication and rotations. We saw it look not good in the first half against St. Mary's, where this team was continuing to pinch in on dribble drives and not getting their hands up to contest 3-point shooters. That could be a problem against LMU. They're not a great 3-point shooting team, but they have a lot of willing 3-point shooters, and they have a lot of height. So the ability of guys like Nolan Hickman and Dusty Stromer and Khalif Battle and whomever to get out and contest threes, if the guy that's shooting them is Javon Porter, for example, like they're going to get open looks because those guys are just bigger, and they're going to get open looks if you're moving away from defending them on the perimeter because you're trying to pinch in on a dribble drive. So we want to see Gonzaga avoid that. We want to see Gonzaga look more disciplined in their half-court offense or in their man offense. Also, I'd like to see if they'll run the zone. The zone was very effective against St. Mary's. Zone is matchup dependent, and I don't think that just because they had a good success with it against St. Mary's, who's known to have been struggling with the zone, means that we'll see more of it necessarily. But this is a team that cannot grab offensive rebounds. That's one of the biggest problems about running a zone is when you're when you're defending a space as opposed to defending a man, it's a lot more difficult in the split second between a shot going up and the rebound coming off to find a body and box out. It's easy to do in a man, theoretically. It's much more difficult to do in a zone where players can kind of crash in, and if you're just in your space, you don't have time to go box out. But this is a team that doesn't crash the offensive glass. So this is maybe a matchup where you can get away with it, experiment with it, give it a shot, see how it looks, because I think it's a weapon that Gonzaga is going to need to use more often this season. Key number 2, get the transfers cooking. Get the transfers cooking. Khalif Battle, Emmanuel Ajayi, the two notable transfers coming in. We already talked about Innocenti a little bit. Get these two guys going. Both of them had great games last time out. Khalif Battle, dominant last time. 6 of 7 on 2-point attempts against LMU on the road. 4 of 5 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. What I like about that stat line is that he took more 2-point attempts than 3-point attempts. I also love that he shot 100% from the free throw line. Don't love that there was only 2 of them. But I would love to see him get back to being that aggressive, attack the basket, get to the rim, get to the line type player. The player we saw in that beautiful 10-ish minute stretch in the first half against Oregon State, that version of Khalif Battle. And this will be him coming off the bench. This will be him in a different role than how LMU, who struggled to defend him last time, they're going to have to figure out how to defend him now when he's on the floor with different personnel, with different players in a slightly different role. So that is a big key in this game, not just for winning this basketball game. Clearly, if Khalif Battle plays well, this team can beat just about anybody. They can probably beat LMU without a great performance from Khalif Battle, but we want to see him getting better because we need him in that 3-game stretch to close out the regular season. We need him in the WCC tournament. We definitely need him in the NCAA tournament. So anything you can do to get him with some momentum, get him feeling more confident about the role you have him in is gravy. And this is a great opportunity to do that. Same with Emmanuel Ajayi on basically every front, with the exception being that Ajayi's role hasn't noticeably changed. He is still the backup 4. He has been seemingly tasked with, hey, instead of running the position the same way as Ben and having a lot of reads and actions, we're going to have you just kind of get the ball and go. Like he's been kind of given that a bit more of a green light to put the ball on the deck and drive and look to create his own shot. That's what he did well against LMU last time. I'd love to see that again. Love to see that again. The confidence, the borderline arrogance, the swagger, the just give me the ball and let me go to work type of mentality. That was so absent in the first part of the year, and we saw glimpses of it in this game, and then now we've seen it a little bit more recently. So this is a perfect opportunity to flash it again, to show Coach Romar what he's got, to do it at home in front of the crowd. There's a lot of things about this that could really work out well if Ajayi can showcase what we know he's capable of in this game. Key number 3 is to get Dusty, Stromer, and Braden Huff back on track. Huff's been inconsistent. He hasn't necessarily been in a prolonged slump. He's had multiple of his better games this season, fairly recently, but Stromer in particular has just not been himself really since the calendar flipped to 2025. In the last 8 games for Dusty Stromer, which that is the LMU game and every game since then, he's averaging 4.8 points. He's averaging 0.9 assists and 0.9 turnovers, so the same assist-to-turnover ratio. He's shooting 26% from 3. That's 6 of 23. In his last 8 games, Stromer is 6 of 23 from 3. He's only attempted free throws in 2 of those 8 games. He's not getting to the rim. He's not getting to the line. He's not knocking down his threes. His minutes per game is 19. It was 23 in the first 15 games of the season. Not a huge difference, but a fairly noticeable one. The addition of Emmanuel Innocenti into the rotation has been a factor in that as well. But it's also worth pointing out that in those first 15 games, Stromer shot 40.5% from 3. He shot 56% from 2. In those last 8 games, 50% from 2 on far less attempts, and then 26% from 3. He is in a significant shooting slump, and this is a good game for him to break out of that, get some confidence, prove that this is a 9-man rotation for Gonzaga and that Innocenti is not fully replacing him, because they need every single person firing on all cylinders for this team to reach the potential that we know that they have. For Huff, it's just been inconsistency. He scored 14 or more points 7 times this year. He has scored 5 or less points 5 times this year. You just don't know what you're getting. Part of that is Graham Ike. And Graham's been very consistent as of late. But what that does is sometimes Graham just plays most of the game and Braden doesn't get a lot of opportunities. And that's why you have those kind of low scoring games. Sometimes Braden still doesn't play all that much and he still scores 12 or 15 points because he can just get hot and score on back-to-back possessions. We've seen him do that. The issue for Huff right now, the outside shot is not there. Under 21% from three on the season, 5 of 24. We've seen it before. We saw it at times last year, but woof, it has just not been a consistent part of his game at all. The other thing for Huff, and we've talked about this dating back to last year, your boy's really good at home. He plays great at the kennel. That's great for tonight, but he does not play well on the road. This season, in home games, 13.5 points per game, 68.8% on two-pointers. On the road, 9 points per game, 48.9% on two-pointers. He's literally 20% better at home than he is on the road on those 2-point attempts. He's actually has not made a three at home, and he's made all of his threes either in neutral sites or on the road, which is a weird anomaly, but that 2-point percentage is very consistent. He's also averaging 2.3 free throw attempts per game at home, which is not a ton, but it is more than the 0.3% or 0.3 free throw attempts that he's averaging on the road. He's literally played 6 road games, and he's only taken 2 free throws on the road. 6 road games, he's taken just 2 free throws. And at home, 26 free throws. He's made 21 of them. That's 81%. Massive difference between how Huff plays at home and on the road. Hopefully that's good news for tonight, but man, that's something that needs to get cleaned up for him going forward. Key number 4, kind of a combination of keys we've had a handful of times this year. Get out in transition, fire up the home crowd, start the game off strong. Like there's no reason for this to have any kind of angst or mystery or stress for the fans. I'm not saying it just as a plea for myself personally, but a little bit. And for all of you, I know how we've been feeling at times this year. This is an opponent that, yeah, they won 5 in a row. Gonzaga beat the doors off them last time on the road. This should be a similar result. They should be able to win this game by 25 or 30 points. And what I want to see is if it's a 25-point win, but they were within 8 for most of the first half, and then they kind of went on a little run at the end of the first half and then started off the second half strong, fine. But let's make there be no mystery here at all. Let's get off to a strong start in the second half. Gonzaga amazingly did that against St. Mary's, which was fantastic. It's rare to see them do that this year, and especially against a team like that. Let's do it again. Let's force Stan Johnson to call a timeout before the media timeout in the second half. Let's make this thing just out of the question good. A big way to do that was, like we said, 8 steals last time these two teams played. Get some steals, get out in transition, throw down some dunks, build some confidence up for guys like Battle and Ajayi. Like there's just a lot kind of mixed in with this key, along with some of the other ones that I think could really kind of get some confidence back for some of these guys going into that road game against Pacific. And then key number 5, let's get the walk-ons on the floor. Not even just the walk-ons. Let's get Jun Sukio and Ismaila Diani some minutes. We've seen them play a little bit as of late. They played against Portland, played against Oregon State. Let's see Joe Few. Let's see Q, Joaquin Reyes more. Let's see Noah Holland if he's healthy. We haven't seen him in a while, so I wonder if there's some health stuff going on there. But this would be a nice stretch to get these guys some action. The Zags play on Saturday, and they are playing on the road, so they'll play tonight at home, then they got to fly out to Pacific, to Stockton, and then play that road game there and then fly back. And so just any opportunity to get Nembhard some rest, to get Hickman some rest, to get Graham some rest. If you can get Diani in there for 5 minutes, get Yo in there for 5 minutes, get the walk-ons for a couple minutes, let the crowd cheer on Few and Q and those guys, and give your key players, your starters, a little bit of an opportunity to rest before a road game 2 days later. Well, folks, Ryan Nembhard, speaking of him, he's going to break Gonzaga's single-season assist record. He's going to break it very soon. He's also going to break the WCC assist record, but he also might do something that's only been done 5 times since 1993. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, folks, the big game is almost here, and there is no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections. And if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with 1 more correct pick, and you're cashing out. Personally, I put $15 down on Travis Kelce to get a touchdown and Jalen Hurts to get a rushing touchdown. If both those things happen, I put $15 down, I win $52, just like that. Here's what I love most. It's fast and safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promos tab for any anything on the super sweet $1 million winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We are closing out the show with some Ryan Nembhard talk. For those of you who've been following, I actually recently started writing about Gonzaga. I haven't talked about that yet on the show, but it is at Athlon Sports. If you go to Athlon Sports, check out Gonzaga's website. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. A handful of articles written by yours truly about Gonzaga. And one of the things I wrote about recently is the trajectory that Ryan Nembhard is currently on. He's gonna break Gonzaga's record for single season assists. He's gonna break the WCC record, but there's some other really cool stuff that he might be able to accomplish this season. Right now, as we're recording this on Wednesday evening, Ryan Nembhard leads the country in assists per game, 10.0 assists per game, leads the country by a significant margin. He also has a 4.4 assist to turnover ratio, which is second in the country. He is the most prolific passer in terms of assists per game in the country, and he is the second most efficient passer in terms of assists compared to turnovers in the country. Nembhard was the fastest player in the country to get to 100 assists on the season. He was the fastest player in the country to get to 200 assists on the season, and he currently, at this point, has 229 assists on the season. Let's take a look. With 8 games remaining, and that is, to be clear, just the 8 regular season games remaining. The Zags will play very likely at least 2 games in the WCC tournament, and then they will very likely be in the NCAA tournament, and they will hopefully play multiple games in the NCAA tournament. But we know for an absolute fact that Gonzaga has 8 games remaining. Nembhard is 15 assists away from breaking Gonzaga's single season assist record. 15 assists. It's not going to take him 8 games to get 15 assists. He's probably going to get it at Pacific on Saturday. He will be breaking the record of 243 single season assists set by himself last year. So he already does. I think Perkins is still a little bit ahead of him, but he will, when all is said and done, have the 2 most prolific seasons in Gonzaga basketball history in terms of total assists. He will obviously, again, 15 assists. He can get that in a game. He will definitely get it before the end of the season. He'll probably get it in the next 2 games. Like I said, at Pacific is when I would expect him to break that record. Nembhard is also 56 assists away from breaking the WCC single season record of 284 assists, which was set by St. Mary's guard Emmett Nahr in the 2018-2019 season. 56 assists is what he needs to break that record. That would be averaging exactly 7 assists per game over the next 8 games to get there. Again, Ryan is currently averaging 10 assists per game. And again, to break that record, Ryan will also have whatever games Gonzaga plays in the WCC tournament. So barring an injury or an incredible drop in production, Ryan is going to set the WCC record for single season assists at the end of the season. Beyond that, that's already pretty darn cool. Ryan is currently 71 assists away from 300 on the season. To get to 300 assists in the next 8 games, Ryan would need to average 8.8 assists per game. Again, he is averaging 10. They have some tougher games coming up. St. Mary's is obviously one of them at Wazoo. They got 2 against San Francisco. Some of those teams are decent defensively. Maybe it slows Ryan down. I don't know that he's going to average exactly 10 over the next 8 games, but I feel fairly confident that he'll average 9 or enough to get to that 300 assist mark. Again, that's just by the end of the regular season. You tack on potential games in the WCC and NCAA tournament, there's a pretty darn good chance that Ryan's going to finish this season with more than 300 assists. Folks, that has been done just 5 times since 1993. 5 times since 1993. Only one of those was done by a player at a high major program. Obviously, Gonzaga is not in a power conference currently, but it's only been done once by a player who was in a power conference program. That was Kendall Marshall on that North Carolina team in 2011, 2012. He had 351 assists. The other 4 times this was done, John Morant at Murray State in the 2018-19 season, 331, which is crazy because he was so far and away that team's best player, and yet he's still racked up over 330 assists. Scott Machado, at Iona in the 2011-2012 season, he had 327. Yuri Collins, shout out Yuri Collins. He was awesome at St. Louis. That was in the 22-23 season. Collins had 324, tied with Kay Felder at Oakland in the 2015-16 season, who also had 324. There's some other bigger names that did it prior to 1993. Avery Johnson, a prominent broadcaster, prominent coach. He did it at Southern in the SWAC. He did it twice, actually. Mark Jackson did it at St. John's in the mid-1980s. Greg Anthony did it at UNLV in the late 80s. There's quite a few guys from UNLV because that team just went wicked fast up and down the floor and scored hundreds and hundreds of points. So, of course, they had a lot of guys racking up assists. Sherman Douglas was a phenomenal college basketball player at Syracuse in the early 90s. He did it as well. Like we said, it seems pretty likely that Nembhard's going to be on this list. It's also worth pointing out that Braden Smith at Purdue, probably not on track to do it in the regular season, but assuming Purdue gets a couple games in the Big Ten tournament and some NCAA tournament games, Braden Smith's probably going to do it as well. We'll begrudgingly give him some flowers for that. It's kind of sad that it might take away from Nembhard's accomplishment in the sense that somebody else will do it in the same season. But hey, Nembhard's going to get there sooner. I can almost guarantee you that. And again, Nembhard right now, 10 assists per game. It's among the highest ever in the last 30 years, as you would guess. The highest in the last 30 years is the aforementioned Yuri Collins at St. Louis in 22-23. He averaged 10.1. Nembhard just behind that. Nelson Haggerty at Baylor in the 94-95 season also averaged 10.1. Nembhard is tied with John Morant and a couple of others at exactly 10.0 assists. Nembhard also recently named a finalist for the Bob Cousy Award, the nation's top point guard in college basketball. He's on that list along with 9 other players. Honestly, I don't think Nembhard's going to win it. Obviously, he is the best passer in the country. There is no debate about that. Braden Smith, a great passer, but Nembhard is the best passer. That is an indebatable fact at this point. But Braden Smith is a more complete player as a rebounder, as a scorer, as a defender. He's on a team that is playing better than Gonzaga at this point. So I think the likelihood is that Braden Smith will win this award. There's some other great names on there. Mark Sears at Alabama, slow start to the year. He's playing better as of late. Walter Clayton Jr. at Florida has been fantastic. Javon Small at West Virginia, Zakai Ziegler at Tennessee, Cam Jones at Marquette, to name a few of the players on that list. Nembhard is the best pure pass-first point guard in the country. I don't think he'll win the Bob Cousy Award, unfortunately, but he's going to break some serious records. And it's going to be fun to continue to track this as we get closer and closer to the end of the season. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Special shout out to those everyday listeners. Don't forget to check out the written content at athlon.com talking about Gonzaga from yours truly. Enjoy the game tonight, Zags fans. It's going to be a fun one. We'll have a show on Friday morning, recapping the game, getting you ready for the game on Saturday against Pacific. But as always, go Zags.